Okay. Yeah, should be good, I think. Maybe, possibly. Okay, yeah. Doesn't really matter, I think. As long as it records. I think it should be fine. Right? Okay, yeah, should be. But yeah, yeah, let me just set my stuff up and it should be fine. I think that should be about it. Yeah, okay. Anyways, yeah, so let's talk about the Classic Pass. This is going to be a remake of my original Classic Pass tutorial because the first one was quite frankly really bad. I mean, the audio was bad. There was no really planning. I didn't even have like a bullet point journal. I mean, I had my original journal, but that was like slightly like different. It was badly like it was hard to like turn the pages and whatnot. So you know, I have everything like organized right now, so that's much better. And yeah, it was badly explained. I think like the structure of the original video was really just garbage. But yeah, so there's gonna be a further expansion on mechanics and crediting. So yeah, but yeah, so anyways, before we get into it, I just want to say that this will be more of a yeah, this will be just how I personally approach the Classic Pass with my own sort of experience. Keep in mind that I am a technician. I'm not necessarily a sort of worker, so you do have to keep that in mind. If you want like a worker pass, I don't think I can really provide that. That's a worker pass is more or less just something that you have to gain throughout your own experience. Yes, hi Kai. I'm not actually sure how to pronounce your name. Hello, how's it going? But yeah, we're just gonna be talking about the Classic Pass today. So yeah, but yeah, so this Classic Pass is yeah, it doesn't have to be something that you do. Yeah, so the Classic Pass, so this is my way of doing the Classic Pass. It doesn't have to be your way to approach the Classic Pass. Hello, welcome everyone. But yeah, it doesn't have to be how you approach the Classic Pass. It's just you know, my personal tips on yeah, how to approach the Classic Pass. But yeah, to just give a brief summary on what the Classic Pass is, it's basically just a secret way of cutting the deck, right? I mean, that's just fundamentally what it is, right? You're just cutting the deck really fast, and yeah, that's just the Classic Pass. But yeah, if you want to know some of the pros and cons of learning the pass or the pass itself, there's a couple of things. Alright. So the way that would actually differentiate a worker and a technician is actually, so I would consider a technician someone who's more or less, someone who wants to, wait, did I say technician or worker? I'm really lost. But a technician, I would consider someone who more or less just tries to like refine sleights a lot, and not necessarily through performance, but through like probably like theory, through thinking like how a sleight can be sort of can be done better. I think a worker would be more refinement through experience, if that makes sense. So a technician would more think about a sleight in sort of a theoretical context, I guess, and a worker is someone who just does it until it looks nice, right? So yeah, I would consider myself to be more of a technician than a worker. So yeah, because I don't really have that much performance experience, right? Especially not with the Classic Pass, because the Classic Pass is something that like people learn nowadays, but they don't necessarily really do outside. So yeah. But yeah, so there's a couple of pros that yeah, so a practitioner focus on practicality would approach it more abstractly. I would say that a worker doesn't is more, yeah, I would say it's sort of like that. A worker would actually just like take it to sort of a man, I lost my train of thought, but a worker would focus on practicality. Yeah, I mean, generally a worker is someone who takes, I would say a worker, yeah, I mean, a worker just, they refine their stuff through experience and experience alone. I think. So if you take a look at someone like David Malik, he does shows like constantly and constantly and constantly, and through those shows he just refines them, right? Versus someone like me, right? I mean, if I perform, then I perform, but like most of the time I just like to think about things and just do them. Whoops, that's bad. But yeah, so yeah, a technician is more like someone who's fidgeting around with cards and seeing what works, what doesn't work. And yeah, worker is, you know, if it works, then I have to like, you know, experience. So yeah, very hands-on with their stuff, right? I mean, a technician is the same way too, but they tend to be more fidgeting around with stuff, right? But yeah, so a couple of pros when it comes to the classic pass as a move. So it is actually a very effective way of controlling a card, because if you think about it, a classic pass, this is all right. So a classic pass is actually just, you know, cutting a deck, right? So if you're actually looking to control a single card, or like control a card, I mean, just doing, whoops. Sorry, my hands are actually really far away from my body right now. So if you're actually looking to control a card and you just do this, I mean, that's pretty effective, right? I mean, just doing this versus if you're doing something like, I don't know, a convincing control. You have to go from here, you have to go from there, you have to, you know, do all that to control a card, right? So it is a bit of a process for other controls. So for a classic pass, it is a effective way of controlling cards. If yeah, but another pro of the classic pass is it actually retains the exact same order. So if you actually look at, for example, a cull, you're actually displacing this card and you're actually moving it. So you're actually kind of displacing the order of the deck, versus if you're doing a classic pass, right? If you're just cutting the deck, so the deck essentially retains the same sort of order. So if you're doing something like the chased order, then the stack will stay the same, right? Versus something like the cull where you're displacing a single card, so that'll disrupt the stack. But if you're doing a pass, then, you know, it's the same order. So that is another pro. Another pro is that it teaches you a number of things about a sleight of hand, even if you don't really like use it. So, for example, you know, tension. You can't necessarily do a classic pass with a lot of tension, right? Because if you try to do a classic pass with a lot of tension, well, you just end up with something like this, right? It's sort of very rigid. It's sort of you just sort of try brute force it. It's not something that you want to apply to other sleight of hand. So, you know, you just sort of want to, you know, relax a bit and, you know, just do things, right? So, yeah, so it's always like the journey is more important than the destination, and that's sort of the mentality that I like to carry over with sleight of hand. So, yeah. And yeah, it's one of those few controls that you can start from a square deck and end with a square deck. Because if you think about it, again, with a cull, you have to do it from a spread, and then you have to end with a square deck. But with a pass, you can just sort of say that nothing really happened, because you start with a square deck and you end with a square deck, right? With a cull, you have to start from a spread and then you end with a square deck. So it is sort of like those things where it sort of just happens, and, you know, you can say that nothing happened because generally the context is nothing happens. So those are like a couple of pros for a classic pass. Yeah, it's not really something that like people think about, I guess, because I mean, it's definitely like an interesting way to look at moves, I guess. But there are actually a couple of cons regarding the classic pass. So it is actually an awful lot of work for controlling a single card, if you think about it, because you're actually just cutting the entire deck for a single card, right? I mean, generally, if you're looking to, you know, do a cull, you're actually just moving one card and one card only. But if you're doing a pass, it's actually really ineffective because you're cutting the entire deck for a single card, and that is sort of ineffective. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of card controls are sort of are sort of in that category where you're doing a lot of work for a single card, right? If you're doing like an overhand shuffle or a Mahatma control, right? I mean, if you're doing like sort of like this, that's like a couple of like a lot of work for a single card, but you have the context of I'm shuffling the cards to hide behind, right? A classic pass, your hands are just like sort of together and it just does the move. So there's not really a context for it either. So it's a lot of work and there's not really like a context for it. Your hands are just there and you're just doing a pass. So again, there's not really like a context and sort of weird. But another thing regarding the classic pass is that you can't really start the pass and you can't break up the pass, right? So if you think about the Herman pass, you can actually do it. You can start doing the Herman pass before you do the. You can start doing the Herman pass before both packets come together, right? So for example, if you have a card selected and this packet might be hiding this from this specific angle, you actually start. Oops, sorry. My camera will focus, right? So you can actually start doing the classic pass before your hands actually come together, right? For the free turn pass, you can actually break up the pass into two distinct motions, right? You're gonna have the steal in one motion, and you have to square up in another motion. But for the classic pass, you have to do everything in one specific motion and one moment. So that is sort of a disadvantage because, yeah, I mean it's fast, but you know, I do sort of like breaking moves apart, especially for a free turn pass. You know, you can have chill out a bit and then complete the pass, so that is a disadvantage. Yeah, it is. It's difficult to get into like sort of a performance level. I mean, yeah, that sort of leads into my next point, where there's sort of no good angles for the pass in general, because if you look at the pass, I mean, you know, it's sort of bad from the back, right? It's sort of bad from this side as well, right? It's sort of bad from here. It's bad from here. It's sort of bad from the top either, too, right? Because you can see this angle over here tends to flash a bit, right? So there's sort of no good angles for the pass, and people, I mean, it's a very fast and direct way to control a card, but again, there's not really like good angles for the pass, right? I mean, it basically just flashes everywhere, and that's sort of why people try to have like an invisible pass, because that's like that's sort of like the standard, right? If you can make a sort of move where there are no good angles look good on camera, then you know, that's like, yeah, this is my invisible move. So that's sort of like, it's sort of why it became a flex move. It's because, you know, if you can make a no like good angle move look good, then you know, that's sort of the challenge. But yeah, so yeah, let's go over some history behind the classic pass and just the pass in general. So we know for a fact that passes in general are very old. I mean, if you think about it, passes in general are just like a way to cut the cards, right? And what better way to, you know, cancel a cut with a secret cut, right? So if you think about it, after a gambling shuffle, for example, or whatever, right, you actually give the cards a cut. But if you're controlling a card to the top and you're retaining it to, on top, and you just give the deck a cut, well, you sort of want this card to remain on top. So what do? Well, you just give the cards a pass, right? You just want to, because you want to retain this card on top. So generally the pass is extremely old because gamblers want to cheat, right? And they want to cancel out a cut. And so that's the main utility of a classic pass. But as far as I know, the pass, not the classic pass, as far as I know, as it goes, actually dates back to 1512 from a book written by an anonymous author called Liber Vagatorum. I think it's something around that pronunciation. We don't know if it's a classic pass or any sort of type of pass, But history says that the Herman Pass might actually have predated the Classic Pass, which is generally very interesting. Because as far as I know, the Classic Pass, or the first fully fleshed out description of the Classic Pass, actually dates back to 1786 from a book called Testament de Jérôme Sharp. And that is, again, that's like from 1786, so it is a very old book. But yeah, back from the Herman Pass, I think that move was like, again, it was also like from the 1500s or something along those lines. So again, there's like a very big difference from fully fleshed out description. So again, I think that the Herman Pass might have predated the Classic Pass, which is interesting. So nowadays, well, not nowadays, but like before this era, so before the digital era, according to David Malik, the Classic Pass was actually used as a sort of rite of passage. So by rite of passage, I mean like you weren't considered a fully fledged magician until you mastered the Classic Pass. So apparently, yeah, you weren't a magician until you could do a good Classic Pass. And apparently this was seen as a sort of barrier, right? Right? As a sort of like barrier to ward off anyone who wasn't like dedicated to, you know, practicing magic and whatnot. So again, you weren't a fully fledged magician until you mastered the Classic Pass. So if you weren't, you know, willing to dedicate time into the Classic Pass, then you aren't a magician. So that's sort of like how it was used beforehand. But nowadays it's used as a flex move. So if you can do a good Classic Pass, then wow, you have clout on social media, I guess. But yeah. All right, yeah, see you later, Kai. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and have a good school, I guess, a school day, a school work. Yeah. But yeah, with the history out of the way, we can move on to the mechanics of the Classic Pass. Yeah, there's nothing really that special about the mechanics of the Classic Pass. I mean, it is relatively simple. I mean, it's simple in mechanics, but it's just difficult. So you start off with a pinky break anywhere in the deck, right? And it doesn't really matter where in the deck. You can actually do it like from lower, from higher. It doesn't really matter, but generally if you're just starting out, I would highly recommend you doing it from the center of the deck, because that's where it's most balanced and whatnot, right? So yeah, you're starting off with a standard steel grip and you have a break anywhere in the center of the deck, right? And notice that my thumb is actually covering this long edge of the deck, right? And this will be important later, because when I widen the gap of the Classic Pass, well, this will flash. So if you actually look, right, this part will flash. So I want my thumb to be there to hide the angles. So yeah, that is extremely important. So you have your dealer's grip and you have your pinky break over here. Now you're going to approach the deck in sort of a biddle grip with your right hand, but instead of grabbing the entire deck with a biddle grip, so if you don't know what a biddle grip is, it's basically this grip. Your middle ring and pinky finger are lined up on the front edge of the deck, and your thumb is gripping the back edge of the deck around the corner, I would say, the bottom left corner of the deck, and your index is curled in on top of the deck, right? So you're going to approach the deck with your right hand like so, but your right hand is actually just going to grab the bottom packet of the deck, right? So you have your break, right? And so now you have a top and a bottom packet, and your right hand is just basically going to contact everything that's below of the break, right? So everything that's from over, if it would focus, from over here, right? So actually, let me just use my ace, right? So if I have an ace over here, right, I'm grabbing everything from the ace downwards, right? So my right hand is grabbing everything from there. And as I actually grab everything on the bottom, I'm actually just sticking my pinky finger deeper into the brake, right? So this is sort of like, it's done at sort of the same time. So I have my pinky brake, and as I grab everything, and now that I have pressure on the entire deck, I can just stick my finger into the brake, right? And yeah, so the control just sort of temporarily moves on to my right hand, right? So my left hand retains control for just a brief second. Here, my right hand has control. It grabs the entire deck. Now it gives me the opportunity to stick my entire pinky in there, and now both of my hands are gripping the deck, right? So that's sort of like the transition into the classic pass, right? And so you'll notice that this is now the grip, right? Underneath the cover of the right hand. So you'll notice that my middle finger, ring finger, and pinky finger are clipping the upper right corner, the upper right packet. And you'll actually notice that my pinky over here, it's actually not stuck deep into the brake like so, right? The only part that really contacts my pinky is the lower right corner over here. If my camera would focus one day. All right, there we go. So this is essentially the only part that's contacting the upper right, the upper packet. Man, I'm struggling with words today, but yeah. So essentially, now you're having the upper packet clipped in between of this part of your pinky, as well as your ring finger and middle finger, which is just wrapped around the deck, right, like so. And so now, since you're grabbing the bottom packet like so, and your left hand is clipping the upper packet, right? Now this gives you the opportunity to essentially drag this packet off to the side, right? So I'm just sort of it's just like a depiction of how the packet sort of works. So now you can actually just drag the top packet off to the side by clipping it like so. So this clips around, right? And now as this packet sort of clears the upper packet, your right hand is going to pull this packet upwards, and then this packet will clear the bottom packet, right? So oops, sorry, I'm bending the heck out of this card, so I'm gonna need to switch real quickly. All right, so you're in this position, and now you're basically just grabbing this lower packet with your middle and thumb, and your index is still sort of curled on top, right? So now you can basically using your pinky, middle, and ring finger, you can just sort of drag it to the side and to the bottom as your right hand pulls this bottom packet upwards, and this will cause both packets to interchange, and you can see that they're sort of moving out of each other's way into a sort of L formation, but you don't want that much, right? You just want like a very brief like moment, right? So as you're in this position, once both packets sort of clear each other, so you can see that like this can move and it won't hit this packet. So once you're over here, right, you can sort of relax pressure, which will cause this packet to rotate back into your hand in its sort of original position. And now what you can do is that you can actually just, close everything up. And that is how you essentially do a classic pass, right? It's nothing too difficult, but I do want to go over it. So once again, you have a pinky break somewhere in the deck. You approach the deck, and then you transfer control over to the right hand for just a brief moment to allow your pinky to stick into the break just a bit deeper. And now you're going to use your left hand to pull the packet off to the side. And as this is going on, your right hand is going to pull this bottom packet upwards. And once both packets are clear, you can now release pressure. And now your left hand can rise upwards to meet the other packet. And your left hand just drags along the long edge like so. Right? So in motion, or rather in practice, it just sort of looks like sorry, I lost a break. So in practice, it just sort of looks like this, right? Grab, transfer, like so, pass, drag, right? So that's the general motion of the classic pass. It's not really that difficult, but again, it does sort of require practice that yeah, that yeah. I don't know what else to say about that, but that's generally the how the basic mechanics of the pass works. But there are a couple of different approaches that you can take for a classic pass. So when you do a classic pass, right, there's the first approach is your left hand does everything. So your left hand does everything, so your right hand just holds this packet still, so it holds the bottom packet still, and then your left hand just muscles your way through, right? So it just does everything, right? So right hand does not move at all, and it just pulls the packet downwards and up around. And that's the only thing that so that's a pass that only requires the left hand. But there's also another approach where your right hand does everything. So in this case, you're still clipping the upper packet with your left hand, but your left hand is holding it in a very relaxed grip. So what this gives you the opportunity to do is now it's still being clipped, but you can just pull this packet over and it does everything, right? So that's another approach where you have the classic pass done with just your right hand. So if you have this packet clipped in a very loose grip, right, you can just sort of pull this packet up, and through this relaxed grip, your packet will naturally fall back into position, and then you could just sort of square everything up. So that is a classic pass where your right hand sort of does everything. But I do like but the approach that I like for the classic pass is actually just doing both, right? So it's basically an approach where my hand does sort of both. So my left hand and my right hand does equal amounts of work, and so through that there will be less tension involved in the move. So rather than having like one thing pull everything or one hand force everything, both of my hands are going to apply equal work. And that's sort of the approach that I described in the original basic mechanics like a while back. But essentially, when you pull this packet off to the side, your right hand is also going to sort of pull this packet upwards. And man, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm always struggling with the classic pass. But so as you're pulling this packet off to the side, you're also pulling this packet upwards. And through that, once this packet clears, you can just sort of relax, sort of like the right hand approach to classic pass. It can just sort of relax, letting this packet fall, and now instead of one packet meeting the other, both packets are going to lower. The right hand packet is going to lower, and the left hand packet is going to go upward, and so they're just sort of going to meet at the center. And so I think that's a much more effective way of sort of controlling tension in the classic pass, because if you try to do one hand to do everything, look how much tension there is throughout the entire move, right? There's just not it's just not a good looking move, right? It just looks bad, right? But if you have everything done both equally with both hands, then I think that looks a lot better and feels just a lot better, right? So again, you can have the left hand does everything, or you can have the right hand does everything. But ultimately, I like a pass where both do equal amounts of work, right? So something like a bit softer, right? So those are three different approaches to the pass. Personally, I like the third approach, but again, you don't have to necessarily follow how I do things, right? So yeah. Now, this is where the bulk of the video will go to. This is tips from my experience. So tips on how to do the classic pass. So yeah. So whenever I do the pass as a control, I do it from a spread, and I do this for a very specific reason. And so the reason why I do it as a spread is because when I'm showing the card around, I can actually use my thumb to actually just prop this packet onto the fat of my thumb, like so, right? So I can just do this, right? Nothing too fancy, but it helps immensely. So what you can do is that to do this, it's actually extremely simple. You have the deck basically pinched in between of your thumb and your middle finger, and so this is basically the only thing sort of grabbing the deck right now. But you can basically lift the deck with those fingers, and can use your ring finger and your pinky to sort of kick it off to the side. So once you lift it up with your thumb and middle finger, you use these fingers to kick it off to the side, and they're relaxed, and then now the deck is resting on the fat of the thumb, right? And so I do this for a very specific reason. It's because when you do the classic pass, right? When you do the classic pass, if you notice, to do the classic pass, I actually have to elevate it onto the fat of my thumb, right? But if I do this right from the get-go, I don't have to do this weird elevation thing. So if I do like a pass from a spread normally, right, I have to kick it up and then do the pass. But if I do this elevation thing right from the get-go, I can just pass immediately, and that saves me a lot of time. So this is actually something I believe from Z. So Z is a magician, mainly a coin magician, but he does do card work. So yeah, so that is a way to get your pass a lot more effective, is to just, you know, raise the deck to the fat of your thumb, like so, right? Nothing too difficult, but it does help with your pass immensely, right? Versus something like this, right? I have to raise it up and then do the pass. So again, this saves time when doing the pass. Another tip for the pass is that you can actually do it from a perpendicular position. And so by perpendicular, I actually mean doing it from this angle. And the reason why I actually do it from this angle is to actually use gravity to assist in the pass. So this is actually a theory from Aaron Fisher. So Aaron Fisher, when he wrote the Paper Engine, he actually revolved a few of his moves around the concept of gravity. And using gravity means that now you have another force at play that can help your moves soften up, right? Because now you don't need to apply as much force or as much tension to help the move, to help the packet rotate downwards and around. You can use gravity. You can sort of relax and let gravity do the work, right? Versus letting your hand do all the work. So now you can use gravity to help out, and you know, that softens up the pass. Daniel Garcia has something similar. He calls it the angle pass. I know Bebel also does this. So Bebel actually starts from here and does it to flat, right? Personally, I like doing it from here to sort of off to the side again. So mine is sort of here, does the pass, Bebel style, and then I tilt it back down to sort of square everything up. But if you think that's too much motion, then don't do it. But personally, I think that, you know, that's a fun way to do the pass, I think. So again, right? You're just clipping this packet as per usual with your classic pass, and you're just grabbing everything with the bottom. You're just grabbing the bottom packet with your right hand, and initially you can actually use the gravity to sort of help with the initial pulling down motion, right? But then you can so you can actually use gravity to help with the initial pull down of the packet, and this will help soften up your left hand a whole bunch, right? But remember, you're also tilting this packet sort of back around, right? So when you do this, when you tilt back, again, you can use gravity again, right? Because once you use gravity to sort of pull this packet through, you can use gravity to basically help with this part by relaxing your clip So once you relax the clip, you can see that this packet sort of just falls back into my hand, which means now I can just raise this deck hand, this left hand, this deck left hand packet onto my right hand packet and square everything up. So again, gravity can be used to cut corners in a lot of good situations. So the original part is pulling it down using gravity, right? You will eventually need to use some force to pull it back down, but for what it is, right, you can use gravity for a while, right? Pull it down, use gravity again to relax the packet, and then square everything up. So those are a couple of ways that you can use gravity to help with softening up your paths. Ultimately, gravity won't help you with speed, right? So you can see that gravity is a bit more slow to act, right? Because obviously acceleration and whatnot. But if your main problem with the classic pass is tension and you tensing up to execute a classic pass, then relying on gravity to execute a classic pass will help you immensely. So I do highly recommend it. Another thing that you can do is that I usually just curl in my index finger to do the classic pass. So when someone tells you to do a biddle grip, most of the time people actually tell you to do this, right? This is what a traditional biddle grip or an end grip looks like. So rather than having the index curled on top, your index is actually touching the upper left corner of the deck, and the rest of the cards are in the same exact position, fingers rather, are in the exact same position. But I find that this is really not the best grip for the classic pass, and I'll explain it right now actually. So when I actually do a dribble, right, you can see that I'm actually doing it from this grip, right? I'm doing it with my index curled in. When I'm doing a riffle, I'm again doing it from this grip. So if I'm doing a dribble pass or a riffle pass, for example, right, if I'm doing it from this grip, that means I have to change this grip, right? There is no way to apply pressure unless I curl in my index. So the fact that I have to curl in my index and then execute the pass or the condenser means that I'm wasting time again. So why not just do the pass like this from the get-go, right? So if I just did the pass like this from the get-go, now I can do whatever without any delays, right? So if I did my pass like this and then I curled in my finger, you can see that there is actually a brief second delay where I have to change grips. And again, it's not really that bad, but I do like efficiency, so that is something that I have to keep in mind. Some people say that this provides less cover than this. I guess, I mean, you can see that there is sort of more of a window or sort of more of a gap versus this. But I do value fluidity and flow over sort of cover any time of the day, because I mean, if you think about it, I mean, if someone isn't looking at your hands and they just happen to see this, right, then you know that brief second can actually play a huge difference, right? So I think I would value, you know, one smooth motion over like two sort of motions, right? So that's why I do like having my index curled in from the get-go versus having it extended. Again, this is just like a personal thing, but again, right, my biddle grip just looks like this, and so having it change specifically for a move for me doesn't make sense. So personally, I like having it curled on top just to match my normal biddle grip, and it also helps with fluidity, right? So having it like so doesn't really suit my style, but if it does, then, you know, more power to you. But personally, I like it, you know, I like it curled on top of the deck just to imitate all the other biddle grips that I do. And yeah, this will help with everything. So yeah. There's also a couple of things that I want to touch on that I don't necessarily do, but I do want to say that yeah, that you can sort of apply to your pass. So when you do a pass, you can actually sort of do you actually sort of stick your thumb onto the back of your pass, right? And so this is a tip from Jay Sankey. So you actually stick your thumb deep into this corner of the deck like so, and then you execute the pass. You actually see that covers the flash over here. So when you do a classic pass, you can actually see, because the pack is being sort of dragged in like this, and then to the bottom, you can see that there is sort of a brief like glitch, or sort of a brief flash like over here, right? So the way that Jay Sankey actually does to get around this is that he actually just sticks his thumb in there, and that covers that angle, sort of, right? It's not perfect, but it does help with that a bit, right? So keep that in mind. If you want to apply it, then you can apply it. Personally, I don't really do it. I just like doing this more, right? But, you know, again, this is just general tips that you can do. The other thing that you can do is that you can actually start it with a... you actually delay the pass, right? So a big mistake that people do when they're doing the pass is that, you know, they try to do it right from the get-go, right? They do the pass right after they have a card selected. And that's not bad, but if you really think about it, right after you have a card selected and return to the deck, that's where all the heat is going to be, right? Everyone is going to be looking at this specific moment. So why would you necessarily do the pass when everyone's looking at your hands? You want to delay that pass, right? You want to delay the moment when you do the pass, because you don't want people looking at your hands, especially because the pass doesn't have any good angles. So you sort of want to delay the pass, and there's a good way to do that. And the best way to do a classic pass delayed is to do an Earth break. So if you're keeping like a selection, for example, like the 2 of clubs under a pinky break or anything, what you can do is that you can actually transfer this to a Earth break. So if you don't know what an Earth break is, well, I'll just describe it right now. So the way that you get into an Earth break is that you have your pinky break over here. Your ring finger is going to open up the break by going along next to your pinky, and it's going to lift up. So basically now you have this nice little tent formation. Obviously everything over here should be done under like cover or misdirection. So now that you have this, your right hand is going to come over and go and basically grip the deck in a biddle grip. And now what you can do is that with this little V formation over here, your pinky is actually just going to stick a bit of flesh into this Earth break over here, and this will maintain the break no matter what, right? So yeah, you have your pinky break, you lift it up, and now you transfer it to an Earth break where your pinky is holding the break like so, right? And so this looks exactly like a normal biddle grip, but again, your pinky is maintaining the break, right? So here I can actually just delay the break, delay the pass via a Earth break, right? And then I could transfer it back to a dealer's grip, transfer it back to a biddle grip, right? So this is how you can delay the pass, right? And you can see that the Earth break actually has some very decent angles, right? I mean, if your fingers are together, it's covered from the front like so. If you're looking off to the right angle, to the left angle rather, I mean you can sort of see the break over here, but generally the angles are decent, right? Obviously it flashes from the back and it flashes from the right side, but it is better than a thumb break where you can see that it flashes from the left side, from the back, from the right side. But if you do an Earth break, you have, you know, generally all your angles covered. But you can also but if you're afraid of these 2 angles flashing, what you can do is that you can obviously do it from the top, or you can actually tilt it onto the right edge downwards, right? So you can sort of talk like this, right? and you're just exposing this angle, which is probably like one of the better angles. So you could do this, right? Transfer it back to a dealer's grip, continue talking, transfer it back to a middle grip, and then continue talking, right? So that is a way that you can delay the pass. And when you are ready to do the pass, you can just approach with your left hand, stick your pinky in the Earthnace brake like so, right? So you have your Earthnace brake, you stick your pinky in there, and you execute the pass, right? So you can basically do the pass whenever you want, and you don't have to necessarily do it right after a card has been selected, right? So when you're doing a pass, you can see that like, oh yeah, I have to do it right after I have a card selected. You don't need to do that. You can have a card selected, keep a break, right? Talk a bit, right? Have a transfer to a Earthnace break, right? Talk a bit more, stick your pinky in there, execute the pass, and that's it, right? It's you can delay the pass, and that is probably the best tip I can give you, is that you don't have to do like moves right after yeah, you have a card selected, right? You can delay moves, and that's completely fine, right? So again, you have an Earthnace break like so. You stick your pinky in there, and now you can execute the pass. And that's as simple as it gets. Now, this tip is actually from someone by the name of Brian Hart. Brian Hart is the mentor of Chris Orbit Brown. So you don't know who Chris Orbit Brown is. He runs one of the biggest card companies nowadays. So you could go ahead, well, not companies, but card brands. So you go ahead and check him out. But yeah, this tip is from Brian Hart. And honestly, I think it's one of the best tips regarding the Classic Pass. Right? Because you can delay it, right? You can do the pass whenever. You don't have to be stuck in this context of have a card selected, do the pass, and yeah, now you can delay it, you can talk, you can do whatever. And so that's why I think that this is so valuable. Now, yeah, so that's those are the two tips, right? You can stick your thumb in there to hide this angle. That is a tip from Jay Sankey. Or you can have you can delay the pass via a Earthnace break. And so yeah, those are the two other miscellaneous tips that you can have for the Classic Pass. So there's a couple of practice tips that I want to give regarding the pass, and that is, don't aim for speed first, right? Aim for fluidity, aim for flow. And so if you aim for speed, you actually develop a bunch of bad habits. So you aim for speed first. Speed is actually like really tension related. So you try to aim for speed, you'll get things like this, right? And you'll see this a lot on beginner pass videos, right? Where people try to aim for speed because they're afraid like, oh yeah, it'll flash and it won't look good on camera. Well, the point is, the pass doesn't look good. It's not meant to be looked at anyways, right? The pass is always meant to be done under misdirection, right? Gamblers would never do this move under heat, right? They would always do it while talking, while doing something else. So why would you ever do it while being looked at? So don't really care about speed. Always care about fluidity, always care about flow, always care about, just being able to do the move in one smooth motion rather than aiming for speed, right? Because if you aim for speed, you're just going to get a bunch of bad habits, and ultimately, no matter how much speed you add, the pass will just never look good because it's not meant to be looked at. And so keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind that the pass shouldn't be looked at. And so don't feel bad that your pass can't be burned. Again, it's not meant to be looked at. Now, there's another tip for beginners or for anyone who's practicing the pass, and that is when you're practicing the pass in a mirror or in a video, don't look at your hands, right? Don't look at the hands. You actually want to look a bit above, right? So almost like if you're practicing like near your solar plexus, you want to look at a bit upwards. And the reason why, hold on, I'll show my webcam real quickly. Right, so if you're actually practicing the pass like so, right, you don't want to look over here. You actually want to look a bit upwards, right? And the reason why you don't want to look directly at your hands is because it's not meant to be looked at. But looking above the hands means that now you don't have really anything to hide behind. You can basically tell whenever you do a pass via tension. So if you can tell that you're doing a pass by the way that your body is tensing up, then, you know, try and go slower. Try and go slower, aim for flow, aim for fluidity, and then adjust, right? So if you're doing a pass in the mirror and you're looking upwards and you can tell the exact moment where your body tenses up and does the pass, then who's to say that your audience members won't be able to tell that you're doing a pass too, right? Because again, you're tensing up and they can tell that. So again, if you're practicing the pass in the mirror, or if you're recording it, don't look directly at your hands. Look at like slightly above it, right? Don't look too above it, because if you look too above, then, you know, you'll completely miss the pass. But yeah, if you can tell when the move happens, then you're already in the bad spot. So try and go slower. Try and record a bit above of your hands, and that'll help you immensely. And so yeah, my last practice tip is don't be afraid to look for more resources on the pass, right? I mean, I think a big mistake that people make is that whenever they look at a tutorial, they think like that's the definitive source of everything, right? And this applies to new magicians, it applies to old magicians, right? Everyone commits this sort of mistake where, yeah, it's old, this resource is older, or it's the first one that I saw, so it's clearly the definitive resource for this move or for this routine. And that's just not true. If you just rely on one resource, well, you're just copying someone else. But if you're looking at other people's resources, well, you might have missed something that other people have written that might have been considered an improvement, right? Or you can go look at someone else's routine and go, oh, I don't like this, but I can take but you know, I learned a lot of from those things, right? So don't be afraid to look at some bad stuff, don't be afraid to look at some good stuff. Look at everything and learn from it, right? Learn from basically everything. So yeah, feel free to look at more resources and use what fits you best, because I think that's a big mistake that people make. So yeah. Now there's a couple of covering actions I like to go through regarding the pass, and that is yeah, I mean, the very first one is just a square up, and it's the one that I use when there's a selection. So when I do it from a spread, right? If I'm doing it with, as a square up, well, it's basically the exact same thing. I mean, I just do the pass, and under the guise of just dragging my left thumb along the long edge, that's basically covering the pass, right? Because I'm just basically sort of fidgeting with the deck, right? And that's basically when I do the pass, right? So, you know, I have a messy deck or whatever, right? I do the pass, I square everything up, and that's it, right? That's basically how I cover up the pass, right? But there's a different, I can't English, but there's sort of a different way to execute the pass, to cover up the pass as well, and that is a riffle pass. So if you don't know what a riffle pass is, it's something that I believe was developed by Dr. Elliot, so James W. Elliot. If you look at the riffle pass, originally, this is what the riffle pass looks like. Here you have, you know, you have like, you have your break like so, you're riffling the top of the deck like so, and then as you go down, you're riffling the back of the deck, and that's when you execute the pass. So I'll break it down real quickly. So you have your pinky break, and your right hand just goes over to cover the rest of the deck like with a normal pass, but now your thumb is actually going to go into this gap in between of your right hand like so. And now your right hand is basically just going to tilt upward, right? You're actually the entire this entire thing is going to tilt upwards, and now you're going to basically riffle the front edge of the deck like so, right? And the reason why you're doing that is sort of like a convincer type of deal. So you're doing this just to like riffle, right? Right? And your thumb is applying a bit of pressure, so now this allows you to riffle the pack, right? And now as you go back down to sort of the original position, you're actually going to shoot a bit more downwards than usual. So pretend this is a flat surface. I raise it upwards to riffle. I'm going back downwards, right? And during this time, when I'm doing this riffle, when I go back downwards, I'm actually going to execute the pass, right? So the moment I execute the pass is exactly when it hits their eye line. So pretend like this is like, you're looking at my chest right here. I'm riffling like so, right? So when I do the pass, it's actually going downwards like so, right? So that's when I actually execute the pass. So that was a tough position to be in, but yeah. So I'm riffling, and as I go downwards, I'm executing the pass like so. And now you'll see that my hand, or that the deck is in two distinct packets, right? And now to complete the convincer, what I can do is that now I can riffle off the top packet, right? Like so. So again, I riffle off the front edge of the deck. As I go down, I execute the pass, and now riffle off the top packet, like so, right? So it's just a two-part action of doing this, right? So that is the riffle pass. Actually, I'll show it in the webcam, like so. Right, like so. So I'm actually doing this right here, right? That was a bad one, but you can see that I'm riffling upwards, and as I go down, I'm doing the pass, and I'm riffling everything from the back. So that is essentially how the riffle pass goes. So again, you're doing the pass, and you're just riffling everything that you just passed, right? So you're doing this, and you're riffling everything on top over here, right? So that is the riffle pass by Dr. Elliott. Now, to take the riffle pass just a step further, you can actually do the dribble pass. So again, I mentioned it with the bill grip before, but if you do a dribble pass, right, it's the same exact thing as a riffle pass. So except like without the riffling. But here you have your break, like so. You execute the pass, and now because you're in this grip from the get-go, what you can do is that now you can just dribble, right? So you can execute your pass, and now everything from the bottom that was from the bottom is now in your right hand, which is now you can dribble everything on top, like so. And yeah, it's done in one smooth motion, so like so. Yeah, so there's no delay because of the fact that I'm already in this grip. And so yeah, that's basically just the dribble pass. If you don't know how to dribble cards, yeah, there's a tutorial on my channel, so go ahead and look at that. But generally, it's just doing a pass and then dribbling everything that's in my right hand. So yeah. Another thing they can do is the jiggle pass. It's by Fred G. Taylor and Neil Elias. So the jiggle pass is basically just you execute the pass, right, as per usual, and you just jiggle the deck for no reason. I don't know why we would ever do this. Okay, so my main problem with this, right, with this is that there's no reason for you to do this, right? I mean, obviously it's to help with hiding the pass, I know that, right? But again, who does this, right? No one does this in any context whatsoever besides hiding a pass. No one would do this randomly, right? Imagine you're just talking, be like, oh yeah, right? And then you suddenly just start doing this for no reason. It just doesn't make sense if you think about it. So I'll show it from the webcam, just how ridiculous it is, right? I'm not even gonna do the move, so I'm just gonna do this. Yeah. I'm just gonna. Right? It's like you're not even fidgeting with the deck. You're not doing anything. You're just jiggling it for no reason. So it looks really stupid for some reason. So I'm not sure why you would ever do it, but it's, again, it's a covering action. If you want to do it, then, you know, go ahead. Again, it's just a classic pass, and you just jiggle the deck. Yeah. The last covering action is something that's going to be called the display pass. It's claimed by Juan Tamariz and also Tommy Tucker. They might have created it independently, but usually I believe it's associated with Tommy Tucker. So the display pass is something that's relatively simple. You just do your pass as per usual, and then you actually flash this card, right? So you do your pass, and then you flash the bottom card like so. And so usually it's done under the context of, yeah, you could have picked any of these cards, right? And so when you're done showing this, you're actually just going to drop this packet down, right? And so you could have picked any of these cards, right? And so this will control whatever selection you had on top of the deck under the guise of showing that you could have selected any of the other cards, right? So you do your pass, right? You could have selected any of these cards, right? And to just peel off these packets one by one, you basically just grip a packet with your middle and thumb, right? So you're basically doing this, grip, like so, and then you're releasing pressure. You could have picked any of these cards, right? And yet you landed on that one. And so that's the context behind the display pass, right? Or one of the contexts. There could be a lot of contexts. That's the one that I'm most familiar with. But generally, it's you do your pass, you start displaying cards, and you start peeling them off one by one, like so. Well, not one by one, but like packet by packet, like so, right? And that is the display pass as a covering action that you can do for your classic pass. Now, I do have a pet peeve when it comes to covering actions, and that is this, right? This covering action, right? It just sort of doesn't look good, right? And so, yeah, I mean, my main problem with it is that it doesn't look good, and people are still like actively encouraging it. I remember when I looked at John Galsworthy classic pass post. He has one of the best classic passes, I think, from a Cardician. So he has a phenomenal classic pass. But yeah, I remember seeing the comments and people were like, yeah, if you add a rocking motion, then it's going to be really invisible. And I'm like, no, it's not. So the reason why people actually do this is because it covers all the angles of a classic pass, right? So when you start doing this, right, when you do a classic pass, you can see that it flashes from this angle. But if you tilt it upwards, you can actually see that now people can't see this angle over here flash, right? So people tend to tilt it upwards, do the pass, and to avoid the pass flashing from underneath, they then go dip back downwards to cover that angle. And so, yeah, the reason why they do this is to cover all the angles of the pass, right? So they do this, right? So I'm going to show a webcam of it. So people do this, right? They do this, right? And so again, this covers all the angles because when you raise up, it saves this angle over here, right? And as you go back down, when you dip down, again, this covers this angle over here, right? This sort of angle over here. And so it is technically invisible mechanics wise. You can't tell what motion is being done there, what is being done there. But the spectator can still tell that there is something being done, because who does that, right? If you think about it, right, this is what's being done. And there's no reason for anyone to do that, right? Besides hiding a move. I need to hide the move, so I'm going to do that. And so why would you ever do that? Because it looks good on camera, but there's no context for it. You're just doing this to hide a move. And so as a result, even if you don't show off the mechanics of a move, people can still tell that you're doing a move just based on the fact that you're randomly rocking the deck back and forth for no reason, right? So I'm just going to do it. Did I do it without? Yeah, so you're just doing this, right? I'm not even doing like the move, and you can see like like, you can see how ridiculous it looks, like, because there's no reason for me to be doing that normally. Imagine if I was just talking to someone, right? I'm just talking to someone and then you suddenly see me doing this, right? You think I'd be like going insane or something, right? So it just sort of makes no sense, right? But if you add a riffle to it, at least there's a justification. But again, it's very outdated. So very rarely, especially nowadays, do I see people using a riffle as a convincer. Usually when I see people doing like a riffle, it's usually for a selection. So I believe that the riffle pass was actually developed for Parlor. So Sleight of Hand is old, right? There's no like denying that. But originally Sleight of Hand was used for gambling and for scams, right? So I highly doubt that gamblers did this, right, to cover up their passes. So this riffling thing is most likely developed as a thing for Parlor. I mean, there are resources that say like gamblers used to riffle cards, right? But that's not done as part of the pass. It's more done to disguise the pass. So it is meant to blend in the pass with all this noise, right? So pretend I'm just doing the pass. Pretend I'm a gambler, right? I'm just doing all this, and then I just do a pass, right? And I'm just riffling, right? So that's the general context of a gambler using it. But for Magic, beforehand, close-up is actually a very recent thing. But if you're doing like doing it for like the old days, Parlor and Stage Magic was really popular, right? So when you did the riffle pass, it'll be in the context of showing off to the audience, right? Look at how cleanly I'm handling this deck, right? And then you could do the pass, right? But again, this was during the Parlor days. This was during the era where Magic was meant to be done with a bit more distance and a bit more people. So this was meant to be done for a wider audience with a much further away distance. So applying this, right, to close-up now suddenly doesn't make sense, because you don't need to do this. You don't need to do this for anyone because the person is right in front of you. So you don't really, so now this is an outdated sort of convincer that is still being done for close-up Magic, but again, doesn't work because no one does this unless they need to do a pass. And so the only time where someone does a pass is when they do this. And so it sort of becomes like this interrelated thing where whenever someone sees this, they're like, oh yeah, they're doing a pass, right? They're doing a move because it's too far removed from someone's usual style of handling cards or whatever, right? So again, there should be a consistent handling of how you there should be consistency when you handle cards, and doing this randomly or doing this randomly, it breaks that consistency, right? Erne spoke about consistency in handling and how that is how being natural is. So doing suddenly something that is very inconsistent will break that illusion of naturalness, right? So even if this hides the mechanics of a pass, it will not hide the fact that you're doing a move. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that this is very outdated and should not be done for close-up in general. So yeah, that's just me and a pet peeve, I guess. So let's move on to some applications for the move. So as mentioned before, gamblers use the pass to cancel out a cut, right? So if you have like the spectator cut a deck, right, you can pick the deck back up and then you can just do a pass to cancel out a cut. That was the original use for the classic pass. But if you're a magician nowadays, you would use it for a control, right? So you have a card selected and then you just control it to the top or to the bottom. right? So you have the 9 of hearts and you just did a pass, and that's on the bottom, right? So that's another use for the classic pass. If you have yeah, you can do it as a color change as well, right? You can do it yeah, just to do this for some reason. I'm not sure why you would do this, but you know, those were all red cards for some reason. Nope, that's another red card. Okay, there we go. So you can do it as a color change again. I'm not sure why, but you know, you can obviously do it as a production. So you have a card reversed in the center of the deck without the audience member knowing. You actually do it as a prediction, right? Like, oh, look, the 9 of clubs suddenly appeared on top of the deck. Don't use that. But yeah, that is, again, something, an idea they can use. And naturally, if you use something as a production, you can use something as a vanish. So if you have a card on top of the deck, and you can just do a classic pass, and it vanishes the card, but it does leave it to the bottom. It does leave it reversed in the center of the deck, so you do need to clean that up a bit. But yeah, you can use it as a vanish. The other thing that you can do is something by Derek Dingle. He actually does it as a false cut. So I'm not actually going to teach it, but I am going to show it. So if you do it from a classic pass, you can pass the deck, you can just cut it, right? Under the guise of an undercut. So you can do it like this, right? And that is how you can do the classic pass as a false cut. I've also seen it as a tabled false cut. So when you table cut a deck, you do this, right? But with a pass, you can do this, and that is a false cut, right? So I'm gonna do it with a face-up card. So doing this, right? So that is how you can do a classic pass as a false cut, courtesy of Derek Dingle. So why should you learn the pass? Why should you learn the pass? Personally, even if you don't know a move, I think that you should, even if you don't use a move, I think that you should learn it. So, I mean, this is a very move monkey-esque mentality. I mean, I'm definitely a very move monkey person, but even if you don't use a move, I think that you get a lot out of learning a move, right? And this can be done, this can be applied to things like, you know, the clip shift, the ambitious riser. So even don't use it, then, you know, I do think they can get a lot out of it, right? The journey is always worth more than the destination, right? Because over time you can learn so much more than arriving at one point. So yeah, but yeah, for the classic pass, you can basically learn tension, speed, fluidity, and how they all basically relate to one another. You can't have tension without, you can't have speed without tension, but at the same time, if you have too much tension, you sort of lose fluidity and you sort of lose flow. But if you have fluidity and you have flow, you can give sort of an illusion of speed, right? You can sort of see that, you know, it might not be as fast, it might not be as fast, but it is done in one motion, and that I think it is infinitely better than doing it like, right? So yeah. But yeah, you basically just have to balance all those factors and try and find a sweet spot for a classic pass. Because if you too much tension, then you'll notice that it'll just look like really rough, right? For something like paper, right? Again, cards are paper, and you know, if people see that you're putting too much effort into handling them, then it doesn't really look nice, right? But if you're aiming for too much fluidity, so then you lose out on speed, and you might just, you know, flash the move. So again, it's a balance between tension, speed, and fluidity, and so you sort of want to play around with those until you hit that sweet spot, right? That sweet spot, I don't know what it is for you, but yeah, it is something that you should play around with. The other thing they should do that you can learn from basically playing around with the pass is invisibility, right? Seeing the mechanics of a move is very different from seeing the move, right? So, or seeing the moment of the move, right? So pretend I'm doing a cult, right? You can't see when the move is being done, right? But you can see the mechanics of the move. You can see like sort of like when the move is being done, but you can see when the move is being done. So for example, right, if I'm doing a call, right, and suddenly I do this, right, Wait, hold on, that's not bad enough. So pretend I have a card selected, right? And suddenly I do this, right? You can't see the move, but you can tell that there's something going on, versus if I did something like this, right? And I still did the call. So again, invisibility is something that, you know, people thrive for, but then they forget that seeing a move and feeling a move are just equally as bad as one another. So again, this is something that you want to sort of play around with, right? So yeah, tension, speed, fluidity, and how it relates to invisibility. So play around with those and see how it can hit that spot. So yeah. The other last thing is basically refining sleight of hand. Yeah, I mean, you can tell that sleight of hand, it's never going to be perfect, because at the end of the day, we're human, we're not perfect. And so yeah, it's never going to be perfect, and that's fine, I guess. But refining something, it doesn't necessarily mean to be like better or better than everyone else's handling. It just has to, you know, sort of suit your handling. And obviously you can refine it up to a point where it's better than others, but again, you have to find what works for you. I mean, personally, I think that this pass works well for me. It's always going to be a work in progress for me, for everyone, and whatnot. But, you know, don't stop trying to find ways to improve it, right? Don't stop trying to find ways to make it faster, make it smoother, and yeah, just constantly try and find ways of making it better. So yeah, that is those are a couple lessons they can learn from a classic pass, and I hope that you learned a classic pass so they can sort of go through this journey as well. So yeah. So there's a couple of resources that I'd like to recommend regarding the classic pass, and by couple I mean there's quite a bit. So yeah. There's obviously Expert the Classic Pass by Akira Fuji, the Brick Pass by Alex Pandrea, the Ultimate Guide to the Pass by Alex Pandrea, the Pass by Xavier Spade, on the Pass by Richard Kaufman, the Classic Pass by Jason England, on the Classic Pass by David Malik. It's a YouTube video on Jeremy Griffith's YouTube channel, so Los Angeles. So you go ahead and check that out. Paper Engine by Aaron Fisher is not really a classic pass book or whatever, but it does tell you a lot about gravity, and I think that I didn't really necessarily cover everything regarding gravity here, so go ahead and look at the Paper Engine by Aaron Fisher. Aaron Fisher's Penguin Live Lecture, again, he covers stuff gravity related, so you can go ahead and check that out. He also covers something that I didn't really touch on regarding the Classic Pass over there. He uses the Erdnase handling of the Classic Pass, but yeah, so you can go ahead and check out his Penguin Live Lecture. And the very last resource I can give is probably Ridiculous by David Williamson. I'm not calling him Ridiculous, that's the name of like the DVD set. So over there I believe he teaches the Classic Pass, so you could go ahead and look at David Williamson's Classic Pass, who is regarded as one of the best nowadays. So yeah. But yeah, that was a very long video. But yeah, that's the Classic Pass. It's my approach to the Classic Pass, and yeah, it still is a work in progress, and it always will be a work in progress. I mean, there's just no way to perfect a sleight. There will always be ways to try and refine it. I mean, if you think about like routines by like all the big magicians and whatnot, they're never perfect. They always want to look back on it. They always want to critique their own work. And so you should be like that for components of a routine or an effect as well, right? Try and refine everything as much as possible. It's never going to be perfect, but as long as you try and refine it, it will always be better than the last time. So that's how I like to approach sleight of hand, right? Even if it's never going to be perfect, I like to push for it to be, you know, as refined and as perfect as it can be. So yeah. So yeah, overall, I'm generally glad that about this this video. I mean, it's much more organized and much more detailed than my last tutorial, so I am pretty happy. Obviously the classic past explanation was still kind of lacking, but honestly I don't know how to describe it. It's a weird move. I mean, I've done it for so many years that I don't know, it's sort of weird to describe how a classic pass is being done, because there's not really a way to fully explain how a classic pass is done. I mean, at some point it's just muscle memory, and it's not very mechanical to begin with, so that's like the main my main gripe with it while explaining it. But yeah, before I go, I just want to say, remember to look at other people's passes, not just tutorials either. Look at their performances, right? Look at what you like, look at what you don't like, look at what you want your pass to look like, and look at what you want your pass to basically not look like, right? Look at what you want to avoid. So yeah, just scour like classic pass performances, look at what makes it good, look at what makes it bad, right? And yeah, try and, you know, just grab some elements from here and there, right? Or try and aim for something, like find like a perfect pass video, well, perfect in your eyes, and try and aim for it, right? And I think that way you'll refine your sleights a lot more that way. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I think that's about it. My throat is very dry, so yeah, next stream I'm not sure what I'll cover. I'm probably going to cover the Future Reverse by Ed Marlowe. I won't cover the cover pass just yet. I'm not happy with how it is yet. It's always going to be a work in progress, but it's whatever, right? But yeah, I think that's about it, and stay healthy and stay safe, and see you guys next time. Yeah, peace, I guess.